response.
Welcome to Healthcare Sucks.
Public health emergency of international concern over the global outbreak of novel coronavirus. The main reason for this declaration is not because of what is happening in China, but because of what is happening in other countries. Our greatest concern is the potential for the virus to spread to countries with weaker health systems and which are ill prepared to deal with it.
Countries like India, one of the latest to report cases of the respiratory disease. Until now, individual nations have made their own decision in response to the outbreak. In Italy, more than 6,000 tourists were under lockdown aboard a cruise ship near Rome after 2 Chinese passengers displayed flu-like symptoms. The couple were put into isolation until their test results came back negative for coronavirus. Meanwhile, evacuations of foreign nationals from Wuhan continue. Turkey sent a military cargo plane to bring back 35 Turkish and 10 Azerbaijani citizens and their families. All, including the crew, will now be put under quarantine for 14 days. The EU is bringing back another 350 Europeans on a flight into Portugal, and 150 British nationals will touch down in the UK on Friday. This as a number of commercial airlines suspended flights to China, a decision the WHO is now asking them to revise.
Why did you take this decision? Why? What is the science supporting this decision? Could you reconsider this decision?
Hell no.
We suggested to WHO that WHO should inform the world about transparency concerning these measures, which should not constitute an example to follow, but a decision to reconsider.
For China, the WHO only had praise for their efforts to contain the virus, but it is still spreading fast. Their message, what will protect us is not fear and aversion, but solidarity and cooperation. Charlie Angela, Al Jazeera.
Well, let's go live now to Scott Heidler. He is in Beijing. Scott, many countries are trying to get their citizens out of Hubei, but China is looking to bring its expats back.
Yes, it's a very interesting move by China. What they're going to do is they're going to dispatch charter aircraft, they haven't said exactly where, to bring those residents, those citizens of China who are residents of these affected areas back into China. Now, it said, it didn't really go into too much detail. It just said because of the difficulties they're facing. So most likely that is because there's been definitely cancellation of all flights into where they're from, Wuhan City or Hubei province in general, but also because other airlines are canceling their flights into China generally. So it's become much more difficult for Chinese citizens who are abroad to come back home. It'll be interesting to see where these charter aircraft actually land. Wuhan Airport is obviously open to charter aircraft only, as we're seeing those evacuations from the growing list of nations who are taking their citizens out of Wuhan. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with these Chinese citizens. Are they going to fly them straight back into Wuhan who are from there? Or is it going to land in a different city and then they'll take them down by special bus? We're not sure yet. And obviously they'll have to make some decisions about where they keep them and if they do actually go into the affected area. So it's an interesting move by China. The one thing that they announced over the last couple of days is they're also going to dispatch charter aircraft into Wuhan, in the Hubei province area, affected area, to bring people, Chinese citizens who aren't from there, who are tourists stuck in there. Obviously, they're going to test them. Then they'll bring them out, and so they have the opportunity to go back to their homes in other places in China. So the Chinese government trying to work for their citizens as well, as we're seeing this airlift out of Wuhan for foreign citizens.
And Scott, the numbers of infections continues to grow. What's the latest in terms of containment efforts?
Right now, I couldn't really hear you too well there, Kim. The situation right now with the latest numbers, obviously we're seeing these numbers increase every day. Those who have been affected, infected by this virus and the death numbers. What we're seeing, as a response from the Chinese government, they are, there are 2 hospitals that are being built right now in Wuhan to deal with the growing number of patients down there. One is supposed to open in just a few days. On Monday, they're saying that's when it's going to open up. Now, it's very difficult to know, how quickly they're going to be able to start to accept patients. They say that this first hospital is going to have about 1,000 beds. A few days later, maybe at the end of next week, a second hospital, purpose-built hospital around the Wuhan area to take in more patients. There's also a hospital, grounds for a hospital just outside Beijing here that was used back 17 years ago, 2003, during the SARS crisis. That is being rebuilt, if you will, so they can have more beds for specifically the coronavirus infected. So that should be coming in the next couple of weeks, they expect. So right now, that's the Chinese government move to deal with the current situation. We know that there is a shortage of medical supplies down in Wuhan, and that's something the government's trying to deal with. Other supplies, we've been speaking to people in Wuhan, other supplies, food and water, that's okay. Right now, the focus is on those medical supplies.
Thank you for that. That's Scott Hyder there live from Beijing. Well, continuing our coverage, and Gabriel Elizondo has the latest from Washington, D.C.
The U.S. government is telling its citizens, very simply, do not travel anywhere to China. It's very rare that the State Department would issue such a high-level warning that just came in on Thursday night. They usually reserve this for countries that are at war, or perhaps a country that's in the middle of a aftermath of a very severe natural disaster. So now, level 4 travel advisory for Americans to China. U.S. government saying do not travel to any part of China right now. This all comes as on Thursday that the first case of human-to-human was confirmed in the state of Illinois. It was a husband and wife in their 60s. The wife traveled to China, came back, had coronavirus, apparently gave it to her husband. He was checked into a hospital, went through exams, and the test came back positive. That's the first case of human-to-human transmission of this in the United States. Overall, that brings the total number of people in the U.S. to 6.
Rob McBride has the latest now from Asan in South Korea.
South Korea is finally receiving back, after a number of delays, one of these special charter flights, bringing 368 South Korean citizens. A total of 700 plus are in Wuhan, have expressed a desire to leave. This means about half of those citizens have now returned this Friday to Gimpo Airport in Seoul. We've been in touch with one of the people on that flight, back and forth through social media. He says it has been an exhausting night of screenings leaving Wuhan, certainly screenings on the way into South Korea, but certainly I think a sense of relief to be out of Wuhan, and also gratitude that this flight has been laid on. We, in the last few minutes, have heard that of the 368 people who are on board this flight, 18 of them do have feverish symptoms, and they've now been taken off to medical facilities in Seoul. Now, the rest, that's 350, will be coming south of Seoul to 2 specially set up quarantine facilities. This is actually a police training center where we are at. This is at one of these centers. It's a couple of hours.
Actually, that's good news, guys, that they're starting to quarantine. But as you heard earlier, many places are not.
For the next 2 weeks, they will have individual rooms. They'll be allowed to hold on to their personal device, their mobile phone. They'll be obviously given food, medical checks constantly, but have no visitors whatsoever for 2 weeks to make sure that they do have a clean bill of health.
That's smart. That's what we need to do with all passengers to and from China. Minimum 2 weeks.
Protests and people trying to block the road to stop people coming in here because of the fear of this coronavirus.
2 days of questioning has just wrapped up, and Donald...
And we're going to skip that one, guys. I'm sure you're getting your fill of that from all the 5 news stations that bring you fake news. We're here to bring you the facts, and backed up by other stations and facts. Okay, let's run through it real quick. So much. China bringing their people back. You know, just yes and no. Could be strange, you know. I mean, the strange part is bringing the people back and sending them back into the area. Those people should be brought back and put somewhere safe out of the area until things are calmed down. But sending them back in, that's nuts. Just pure nuts. The U.S. banning everything, good. That's what it needs to be, coming and going. Plus, you heard some of the people are being quarantined by China now, finally. Everybody who's had contact or flown on a plane with them or anything should be in a minimum 2 or 3 weeks quarantine situation. And you know, I'm not for quarantining or M-law situations or anything like that, but this thing is on the verge of getting out of hands, guy. Epidemic. They are using the words like I started using, epidemic. You're starting to hear it like an everyday term now because it is an epidemic. Again, one more time. This was a engineered bioweapon from Canada. And if you don't know the details, hit me up with an email. I'd be happy to send it to you. Or watch my previous videos. I make it real clear. So everybody should be getting quarantined. This couple in Illinois, I believe it was, or Indiana, one or the other, they don't give no details. And they don't talk about the people who are also on the flight. Where are they? What have they gone through? We know that the thermal scans and testing does not work. I mean, it's nuts. It all comes back to Agenda 21. You know, or one world order type situations, guys. We're expendable. You know, and there's the weird things about the population number thing. Go over to Marfugel. He ran through it the other night. That's Marfugel News, Marfugel TV. It's just some strange things going on, guys. I will keep up on it. I've had to do some things around the house today, but I've been keeping an eye on it, so I wanted to hit this. This kind of covers a lot of it. Also, Super Bowl. I'm going to be doing something on it. I mean, literally, it's Super Death Bowl. When you think about all the people flying and all the people cooped up, and I shudder. I wish that somebody would listen. But even if they listen, they're not going to stop the Super Bowl. They're not going to stop huge things at this point. They're not going to stop the air. There's too much money. I want to throw something else at you now. Go to that clock. Click on it on the computer, national debt, and look at the numbers going. I guarantee you, whatever it is, $20 trillion, let's just say, the losses from countries, particularly China, are billions and billions of dollars already. Pretty quick, the numbers of just the money lost is going to be double what that deficit is. Unless by some miracle this thing does a 180, and I would not hold my breath for that. The other thing is as you've already noticed, is deaths and sickness. Click, 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 click. It's going about that speed. Hear me? Click, 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 click. Maybe even a little slower right now. Click, click, click. When you start seeing those numbers, click, 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 it's time to be afraid, guys. Like I said last night, 60 million plus, many of those locked off in quarantine. I mean, even if 10% of that's out there, that's serious plague. Another thing real quick, look at the plagues over every 100, I call them 100-year plagues. Go back and look at them. And just in this era, we've had 3 or 4. So the SARS, the MARS, and China rat. I'm calling this the rat because it's year of the rat. And with that, I'll be back to bring you more news. And don't believe in the fake news on the 5 channels because they're not trying to save your lives, your family's lives. And I urge you to do what you think is good. I urge you to research. Send me stuff, guys. I'll run with it. Get your own channel. Spread the word. But don't believe the fake news. And with that, healthcare sucks! Over and out, my friends. Stay safe.